And our next speaker then, Peter Zaitsev from Pecona.
Okay, well, hello everyone. As you heard, this is supposed to be sponsored keynote, and I should tell you all what you should go and talk to our booth staff, download our software, pay us for our solutions. And yes, I did, but that is not what the keynote is going to be about. The keynote is going to be about the topic many of folks particularly I think in both MySQL and PostgreSQL ecosystems ask me through the years, especially recently, about, hey, what exactly happened between MySQL and Postgres, and how did the things change with PostgreSQL replacing MySQL as the most popular open source database in the last 20 years. And I think this is a very relevant topic for me to talk about. I was involved with open source databases since 1999, when you can think about both Postgres and MySQL were kind of babies, right? It was not as mature databases as they are today. But let's look at the story. And for that, I think it's relevant to go back to about the year 2000, at the turn of millennium, long time ago, right? Now, if you look about what is happening at that time is the most popular databases, they are the commercial database technologies, right? It was really dominated by the big three, Oracle, IBM, Microsoft's SQL Server, right? With a little bit Sybase and Informix in the mix. Anybody here work with Informix? Oh, look at that. Yeah, we have some very experienced people, right? And if you think about the open source databases, at that time, we were actually less than 5% of the market, right? And these are the versions which were popular at that time, right? If you look at the Postgres, it was PostgreSQL 7.0, which just introduced MVCC, right, at that time, right, which is, I think, the feature we, so much rely and expect on those days. And for MySQL, situation kind of was even worse. That's MySQL 3.23, and that means no transactions, right? In fact, the fun fact, I remember reading MySQL manual about that time, and it was saying, MySQL would never ever support transactions because transactions are evil because make everything slow, right? That was indeed in the MySQL manual. Well, of course, that's not what happened, but anyway. Now, if you look at the technology, like an early startups which were built at the time, like, for example, famous Web1, right, or infamous, right? That was one of the biggest, sort of like a highest valuation startups, right, which was caught in a dot-com bubble. Their stack was Oracle running on Solaris. And that was a very common those days, with a little bit of mix of folks running on Microsoft as well. But our very common, right, very ubiquitous default, the open source stacks were nowhere to be found at that time. Maybe a little bit in academia, hobbies, but it's not really even in the internet space. And then what happened? Well, dot-com crash happened, right? And that is really changed everything for that ecosystem at that point in time. What really happened? Well, post-crash, the funding was scarce, right? For years, nobody would want to give you a lot of money to fund your startup, right? Not enough, at least, to buy the Oracle and Sun Microsystems service, right? So folks have to figure out things with other technologies, open source technologies. And another thing, important difference was what Web 2.0, as it was coined, also relied on a lot on the user-generated content. right? And if you could potentially run something like Web1 on Oracle and Solaris, you couldn't possibly imagine doing the same for Facebook, right? That is, just too much stuff. And that is what came to the rise of open source operating systems, right? Linux, but I think in 2000s there were more than that, and they're open source databases. And if you look at that period of time in the early 2000s, MySQL was much more popular than Postgres. And there are a number of reasons why I believe that was the case. One, there was a lot of perception and reality of simplicity, right? You would see a lot of developers may love Postgres because it has a lot of wonderful feature, but that was not as easy to deploy and manage. And that was actually very different focus, right? PostgreSQL was focused about being the most advanced open source database, right? Where MySQL would say, hey, you know what? You want to make sure you can be productive in 15 minutes and features don't quite matter. Also, MySQL was part of LAMP. Linux, Apache, MySQL, PHP, Perl, Python, right? But especially has been default database if you're developing with PHP, which was a very popular language at the time. And also, partly because of those two, it was available as default database from many virtual hosting providers, right? So that really was helping this. Also, PostgreSQL was a community project. MySQL was a company project, so they have finances which have much more organized marketing, and that was really helpful at that time. And we can see at that time was MySQL community, or no, PostgreSQL community was kind of bitter, right? Anybody remembers that image from 2002? But I think what we also had formed at that time, and I think in the early regions of a Postgres, is the seeds of a PostgreSQL future success. We have a permissive license in MySQL compared to GPL in MySQL. We have a community governance instead of single component, right? And also PostgreSQL was very much designed for extensibility, right? The extension interface in Postgres is much better what you could get in MySQL. But then I think the next very important thing happened, which I think was a key, is what the Heroku and Amazon RDS Postgres and then other managed databases, because that means they allowed for so many developers to really use Postgres without knowing how to maintain that. And in fact, I think if you talk to majority of actual users running Postgres, and say, hey, do you know how to set up PostgreSQL cluster with all this like a Patroni and everything? You say, no. I don't know. I can know how to deploy Postgres with couple of clicks, whatever. Right now, it's available pretty much on any cloud out there, right? But that was a big change, making PostgreSQL easy. Then also things change for MySQL. Now, this small independent Swedish company was acquired by Sun, and then Sun was later acquired by Oracle, which had a lot of concerns from everybody in the ecosystem. Would Oracle want to kill MySQL because that is a big competitor for their expensive Oracle database, right, on one side, and then Oracle is kind of everybody's competitor, right? So that means why at a later time we would see guys like Amazon or Microsoft would prefer to send the business on promote the brand name of Postgres, which we are part of, compared to the brand name which Oracle owns. Now we see what the benefits in that phase was really realized. We can see what there are a lot of derivatives for Postgres, both if you can think in a database as a server, right, as Aurora, which was mentioned before, as just commercial forks, which many sponsors here provide, right, And that means that there are much more companies which could participate in that ecosystem, creating a good revenue stream for themselves. We also see what the PostgreSQL was very successful in embedding, right? And by embedding, I mean here not like running as deeply embedded database as SQLite, but for example, if you deploy a product as a GitLab, right? Well, it needs a database, right? And they can provide the whole package without caring of that GPL dependencies, what they can do, what they want, what they have to do with MySQL. And then, of course, there are extensions. Through different times, we can see a lot of leading extensions were built for Postgres, right? We have PostGIS as a leading extensions for JS applications. When we could see a few years back that time series databases was a big focus. Timescale.db was built as PostgreSQL extensions, and now in the age of AI, we see the pgvector as the extensions, as well as a number of other AI extensions. Okay, so where does it lead us? Well, we can see now, of course, as you guys know, PostgreSQL is doing great. Right, it has been the database of the year in 2013, right? And if you look at last 10 years, PostgreSQL was the most commonly selected as a database of the year by DB engines, which sort of combines a number of popularity metrics. We can see also in the recent years, it's replaced MySQL in a Stack Overflow, the developer survey. And that is also, if you look by the same DB engines, the database which is gaining ground on Oracle those days, right? And the fastest growing among the open source database for sure. Let me finish up by covering what I think is going to happen next, which frankly I don't really know, but I want to share my ideas. One thing which I think is very, very clear, what there is still a lot of growth for MySQL. Oh, okay, sorry, for Postgres. Epic fail. Well, there is a lot of opportunity for growth for Postgres. Right? And I think in part it's important because we are going through yet another explosion of the data. Right? We now previously had the user-generated data, then things like Internet of Things, then devices generate data. Now we have a lot of data generated by AI, and people need to store that data, and some of that is going to go in databases like Postgres. On the other hand, I think it's interesting to see that there is some fragmentation going on. Right? Like if you think about all those cloud vendors, a lot of them like to provide as their best choice, most recommended choice, as something which is not quite Postgres. Amazon Aurora is compatible with Postgres, but it's also, kind of different. And then something like AlloyDB would also have a different features. Right? We'll see where that takes us. I think what is also we should watch in this case is what we are having the new take on database architectures. One thing about Postgres, of course, it was designed, initial design more than 30 years ago, right? And we have a databases which are designed from the ground up for modern cloud-native distributed architectures. It would be interesting to see to what extent they are going to take the dominance of the market through next many years, right, or decades. The last one I would highlight here is the AI, right? Because I think what we know, from people's standpoint, people choose Postgres, but at the same time, if you talk about believe in this kind of agentic AI future, and we are going to say what a lot of people, a lot of applications are going to, build by AI, what database that will choose, and what even properties it needs for the database. Would SQL be the best language for that? Some people argue that continues to be the case, but the fact, I think, is what we don't know. So as a summary, I think it is exciting to see we have a phenomenal success of Postgres, but also at the same time, we have this thing what the MySQL community in 2005 also thought what MySQL has won, right? And the thing with community is it is what is called the infinite game, right? You have always winning and losers. There are always a new technology coming up, right? And I would encourage the community to keep innovating and keep contributing. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter.